Ron Nate, God bless you, sir. You're back.
Do you want me to look at you? Or
Yeah, no, look at me, man. We're back.
Okay.
We're rolling. We're good to go.
Okay.
This is almost exactly a year from the first time I met you. I sent you that picture like 4 days ago or something. That was our first interview from last year. We're sitting in this exact room. We're making it happen, man.
Great place. Great place.
Yeah.
Good
Well,
setup.
thank you for coming. Listen, you are the president, or okay, hang on.
That works.
President of IFF.
Correct.
Okay, but
And
that's
IFF is the Idaho Freedom Foundation.
great. That's distinct from do you have an executive director?
No, we have operations director.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, but you're the head guy. Okay.
I'm the head guy. Yeah. They're
Here we
stuck
go.
with me.
They're stuck with you. You did a budget presentation in the Capitol like about a week ago, was it?
We sure did. It was on Monday last week. And we, frankly, got a little bored and frustrated with the process as usual, where the agencies request their budget from the government. The governor goes through and maybe makes a few line item adjustments here and there, presents his budget to the legislature. The legislature goes through and makes a few little tweaks or whatever and produces 90 to 100 budget bills. And the legislature largely rubber stamps that. And you have a budget that comes out not measurably different from what the governor recommended. But it's led to 60% increase in government spending over the last 6 years, 214% in the last 20 years. It's just been an outrageous process that rewards government growth and shows very little restraint. So we thought we'd flip the script a little bit and say, you know what, before the governor comes out with his budget, we will present what a conservative budget looks like for Idaho. And that's what we did last week. The Idaho Freedom Foundation, with our expert team of budget analysts, including Fred Birnbaum and Brett Ferrugia, presented the Idaho conservative budget from the Idaho Freedom Foundation. We recommended $1.9 billion of cuts from what is about a $14.5 billion request from the agencies.
Let me ask you something.
Mm-hmm.
How much money is budgeted to removing silt and debris buildup within reservoir systems after wildfires blow through?
You're talking to the wrong guy.
This is my question. Like ridiculous. I don't think there's a line item for that. But what I heard that I'm like, I like this. I like that people can take a look at the spending. I like the transparency aspect. Controller Brandon Wolf, I think, has done a great job with offering Idaho transparency. And you're like, okay, great. So we can make our own budgets and say, like, this is, if I were the head of the house, this is what I would spend money on.
Sure.
But is that done in collaboration with people that are in charge of these individual departments to be like, okay, look, one of the biggest problems with wildfire management in certain areas is that as wildfire goes through and you have these like controlled burns, what actually happens is you destroy the root system. So then when you have water, an excessive amount of silt flows into, reservoir systems. So if your reservoir system could hold 30,000 acre feet of water over a period of time, it's now only holding 25,000 and then 20,000. You have this big problem. So we actually have this, fuel reduction issue over here, because what's ultimately going to happen is we're going to have to increase the amount of maintenance we spend on like all of these different things. So then the person determining whether or not that's an appropriate expenditure is like, okay, not knowing anything about large land management, I would say we should have cut that dollar. But I see if we spend the dollar here, it saves us $10 in like 5 years because we're going to have to spend it over here. Right? Like, how do you manage that without having the expertise of on-the-ground departments?
What you just described is part of the process that leads to a lot of this overspending. When we went through the budget, we didn't just say, oh, it's $14.5 billion, let's cut $1.9 billion. We went through it agency by agency,
Sure.
line item by line item.
Sure.
We have been transparent and produced a document that shows that we went through education, went through health and human services, public safety, natural resources, economic development, general government, and listed the different agencies and departments within there. We found out things like soil and water conservation, which you talk about, has been double and triple covered. Some of that work is covered in 3 different agencies. And
what do you mean?
That soil and water conservation shows up in natural resources, DEQ, and other agencies. And so...
No, I know. But what you're saying is there's a line item in those 3 agencies that say soil and water conservation.
Yep.
And soil and water conservation are a lot of different things.
Sure.
You could have many different departments committed to soil and water conservation. So what is it that you're saying appears? Are all of these three agencies literally saying, I'm the guy that goes out and does fuel reduction in this ecosystem? Or are they all having different parts of this?
Either way, there is inefficiency. Absolutely.
Wait. Here's one for you.
Yes.
Interesting point that I learned about 2 months ago. 2015, the Department of Environmental Quality does come to an agreement that we are going to reduce the phosphates from municipal water discharge from 5 parts per million to 0.1 or 0.3, depending on the season. I think winter is 0.3 and summer is 0.1. Okay. That requires this enormous upgrade of all of our municipal wastewater systems, which is why you have Middleton investing like $100 million. Nampa's doing it's like $1 billion, like all of this money going into this stuff, right? Mm-hmm. That is water quality, right? Soil and water, right? Because it is dealing with water.
Sure.
Right? Now, you have other people dealing with water that aren't phosphate discharge concerns, more of water storage, water recharge, all of these different water things. So when you're like, hey, water's in 3 different budgets, why is it inherently redundant?
We found all sorts of redundancies.
Not just
water. You picked on water.
Why is it inherently redundant, though?
Now, it could be. And why is going from 5 parts?
No answering a question with a question.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Where's the rules? I didn't get a rule book before
I know.
I came on here.
No. So like what? I'm just wondering, why is it inherent? And it may be. I'm with you. It may be redundant, but how do we know that it is inherently redundant just because it says soil and water conservation in 2 different areas?
Yeah. Well, why is it in 2 different areas? Why isn't it in just one? I mean, I'm an economist. As an efficiency expert, I would say, you know what, maybe it's better to have one agency instead of redundancy of leadership across 2 agencies.
Why is it redundancy of leadership? If one person's like, listen, our department deals with phosphate discharge. Okay. And then there's a Department of Water Resource, and they're like, look, our department deals with managing like cloud seeding programs or, water aquifer recharge or something. They're like, we don't have all the scientists and all the technology to go out and
why not? Why is it across 2 different agencies? Why don't you think there could be here I am asking a question again. Don't you think there could be cost savings by having one agency? There is a reason why our Idaho Constitution limits the number of agencies in Idaho to 20. Because they recognize the growth of government, the growth of redundancies, the growth of unnecessary agencies, and so they limited it to 20. For some reason, our governor and our leadership over the years has increased it. There's like 185 departments if you added them all up. And what they do is they put departments within departments and start calling them one agency. Well, I would like to get back to where we have less redundant leadership, less excess leadership, and say, you know what? We should have 20 departments.
When we were founded as a state, we did irrigation, floodplain irrigation, right? So it was like dump a bunch of water and boom, there we go. As the years went on, we started creating reservoirs, right? As the years went on, we started pumping groundwater, right? From out of the Snake Plain Aquifer, obviously.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? Let's go hard, baby. And then as we continued on, we realized there were some drawbacks to all of these individual things, like all these different problems. So if you looked at from when we had the Idaho Constitution made to now, if you just looked at water, you're like, well, sure, man, it was really simple back in like whenever, 18 something. Now it's hyper complex. We didn't have, aquifer recharge as a specific state funded or managed thing until, recent years, right? So when you say like, hey man, they're layering things on top of things, it's like, well, the world is far more complex than it was, 100 years ago.
Are you suggesting we should ignore the Constitution because now we're so modern?
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is how do we account for the complexities of the contemporary world, like cybersecurity? how do we account for these complexities and needs if the idea is like, well, this is what people thought, a long time ago, so therefore, like, whatever. Like none our contemporary needs for cybersecurity and like energy grid hardening are irrelevant.
What you suggest is the typical liberal response to any time.
I don't think I suggested anything.
Well, what you're alluding to is the typical liberal response to any time someone talks about the limiting principles of a constitutional government. They say, well, we're much more modern now. We have many more concerns. Do you want to take us back to the age of horse and buggy situation, because that's when the Constitution was written. The Constitution is a limiting principle on government. It is not the set of laws of the state of Idaho, but what it does say is what the laws are limited to covering versus what they can cover. And there's nothing wrong with having a limited principle to government.
Sure.
And and limiting it to 20 agencies. Well, you know what? I don't think we need an agency on AI.
Okay.
And so the Constitution allows 20 agencies, but you know what? If the leader said, oh, gosh, this AI is just getting out of control, we need an agency on this. Well, the Constitution says, fine, have that agency, get rid of one of the other ones. We're going to limit it to 20. That government beyond 20 agencies in Idaho is too much. And so keep your work within that.
And we have stuck to the 20 agencies, but it sounds like what you're saying is we have departments within agencies. Is that the idea? Or is it literally like, no, they're breaking the Constitution like at its word?
Oh, I think any rational person with a normal common sense looking at it would say, oh, they've broken the Constitution a long time ago.
Well, look, I'm an average person. I don't know the 20 agencies. If you're saying like they have 128 agencies, I can't name 5. So like which agencies are you saying they're passed?
Oh, within education, you can talk about Department of Higher Education, Department of K-12 Education, the superintendent, the Board of Education. You can name dozens, hundreds, over 100 different departments and agencies. And yeah, you can get into semantics. What's an agency versus what's a department? But I don't think any normal person would look at it and go, yeah, we're following the spirit of the Constitution just by renaming divisions within agencies as not being agencies when they're actually operating as agencies. We have my budget analyst identified 3 different areas, 3 different departments, which were doing services for the deaf and blind. Does that make sense to have 3 different departments covering that? Maybe, like you say, if we have subject matter experts, they ought to be all housed in one department and handling that with one set of leadership rather than spread across 3.
With the deaf and blind, I assume, and again, I have spent 0 time thinking about this until you said it, but I could imagine that there are services for deaf and blind, let's just say within the Department of Transportation, and there are also services for deaf and blind within the Department of Education. Now, again, I don't know because I've been at this for about 20 seconds, but I would imagine that subject matter experts on transportation for deaf and blind would be a different professional than subject matter experts for deaf and blind within education. So when you say, shouldn't they all just be in the same place? It's like, okay, well, we need different people. So are you saying, hey, we may need different people. They should just all sit in this office together, right? Like the articulation, I don't hear you actually saying, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. You're like, look, we got a Department of Higher Education. We got a Department of like K through 12. Okay. Whatever that might be, all within the agency of education. Is that accurate? Like if we called okay, you're not saying eliminate the Department of Higher Education or eliminate those people or the work they do. You're just saying, stop calling them a department and stop calling the K through 12 a department. Just lump everybody into one gigantic category. Don't eliminate any of the tasks they're doing. Don't eliminate, like college. Just stop calling them departments. And then we'll be within the scope of the Idaho Constitution.
I think you're putting a lot of faith into the notion that wherever we are is proper and just, and we got here by people making good decisions all along the way. And so we just look at it and go, if we have 3 agents. No, I'm
not
let me
saying
finish. Let me finish.
I was asking if that's what you were saying. I'm not saying that it's appropriate or not. I'm saying what you're saying is we have too many departments and we should lump all of those together. I'm not saying whether or not those departments are appropriate.
There's absolutely benefits to be achieved by having economies of scale, economies of scope, and reducing redundancies in leadership. When we find that there are things covered across 3 agencies, there's undoubtedly opportunities for savings there. We are making a bunch of suggestions, $1.9 billion worth of cuts, and it's not just from combining one agency here or there. It's eliminating Medicaid expansion. It's getting rid of programs which were ill-conceived and inefficient to begin with, like Idaho Launch, which some of them fall outside the proper role of government. So it's not just that we are picking on areas where you think we don't have enough expertise. Natural budget experts can look at it and say, you know what, there are inefficiencies across Idaho government. I don't have the faith that others have that wherever we are got there through prudent decision-making all the way, and that there are no areas of waste or excess.
Okay, so again, like I hear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And again, with Medicaid or Launch, like, got it. What I'm just struggling to understand is where, if you're saying, hey, look, we have these subject matter, we have 3 different areas that deal with soil and water, and that just inherently de facto is redundant, even though these might be completely different things. And we think that we absolutely can save money by either going from 3 professionals to 2 professionals or putting all of these people in one area. And there's not an obligation or like concern about, okay, but what do these people do? Like, how are they doing? Are they doing different things, or are they doing the same thing?
So you're suggesting that anyone who wants to cut the budget must become subject matter expert.
I'm not suggesting anything.
That's in
Ron. I'm
that's
not
embedded in the question you're asking.
No, it's not.
Oh,
I'm wondering if we have an obligation to. And you could say
you were
no.
Gonna let me answer.
Hang on. You're changing what I'm saying. I asked, is there an obligation to understand what these people are doing, or should it be more of, hey, these people are in the same area and there's savings there? I'm not suggesting a solution at all. I'm an idiot. We're in a garage. I don't have answers at all. I'm wondering, I'm trying to understand.
Yeah.
Because these things seem complex to me. And I'm like, well, I don't know enough to just say like, hey man, I see soil and water conservation in 3 different areas. Therefore, I think we could save money. Because I'm like, I don't know squat about phosphates. I also don't know anything about like aquifer recharge. And these are different things.
Well, the conclusion to that potential criticism is, well, whatever the status quo is must be okay, because there were experts involved in advising 20 legislators on the JFAC committee at some point. And so those 20 members who don't have these areas of subject matter expertise are going to listen to the agency heads who are assumed to be the experts in these areas and have no alternative incentives other than economic efficiency, which is simply not the case. We see agency heads want to grow their agencies all the time. I've studied bureaucratic economics, and the nature of the bureaucracy is to grow. And we have scholars such as William Niskanen and Anthony Downs who have pointed out that bureaus, by their nature, have an incentive to grow up to twice as big as needed, because it is the appropriations process and the process of a legislative appropriation that leads to them over-asking and over-rewarded for spending. So my default is that government tends to grow more than needed and tends to overspend in nearly every area it's spending on. It sounds like your default is that these agencies are run by experts. We should listen to them, and whatever they're asking for is probably more prudent than the average Joe on the JFAC committee who doesn't have that kind of expertise. I'm more of a skeptic.
Ron, I can only tell you so many times. I don't have a default. I don't know how this works. And you continue to portray me as presenting a position that people should consider.
I'm just responding to your question.
No. You're not, because you're telling me it sounds like my default is X, Y, or Z. I'm not presenting a default. And to be really frank, you're not answering a question. The question is, should people in determining a budget take a second to say, hey, look, we have soil and water conservation in 3 different areas. Are these the same functions or are these different functions? And understand that when making a recommendation. Now, there is no statement in that question about what I think is prudent or not. So if you're saying, hey, Matt, I actually think the people that advise JFAC are motivated to grow their department. I don't think they're presenting facts. Mm-hmm. I don't think they're presenting a fair picture of what is needed and what's not needed. And therefore, I think they take the JFAC committee down a inappropriate path. And that leads to increase in spending without value to us, the taxpayer, or without the appropriate value. Like, we got 50% of the value for the dollars. We should be getting 100% of the value for the dollars. Okay. Mm-hmm. If that's your position, okay. But I'm not telling you you're right or wrong. And I'm not saying, well, when I make the budget, I X, Y, or Z, because I don't know squat about this. So what is your position, what I kind of articulated, which is you saying, hey, look, department heads are inherently biased towards their department and always ask for more money without the requisite value to the taxpayer? Or is it like, what is it?
It's yes and yes. So absolutely, you should take into account the technical nature of what the agency does, what the bureaus do. Sure. Look with a skeptical eye of whether this work spread across 3 agencies is better than having it in one agency, whether or not there's redundancies there. Absolutely, you should take the look at all of that stuff. You should also look at it with a skeptical eye that agencies have a tendency to over-ask and underproduce. You also should look at it that those decision makers on the appropriations are not staffed with a bunch of experts. They are left to listen to the agency heads, which I think are given far too much credibility in terms of restricting what they say to efficiency rather than to government largesse. The voice that's not heard in JFAC and in the budgeting committees are the voice of the public and the voice of others who might have some other information. Their testimony is not allowed. There's no outside testimony allowed in the budgeting process. So how do we expect that whole process is supposed to achieve efficiency and the proper role of government? And I'm not saying that everything they do is proper. So how are we to know that we're getting the proper role of government done right, done most efficiently, when the process puts more weight on those asking for the money being portrayed as experts, and the rest of the conversation is left out of the room? You're dealing with non-experts making appropriations. You're dealing with so-called experts making the recommendations and no outside voices. A lot of what we hear about the budget at IFF in doing our research and talking to people is we get tips from people within agencies saying, you won't believe what's going on in these agencies, the overspending. I talked with somebody in the Department of Labor just a couple of days ago. You wouldn't believe the redundancy. We want to do more work. They don't have more work for us, but they keep asking for more FTPs. These things are
FTP?
FTP is a full-time position.
Gotcha.
Where they're getting paid for positions that are not filled. And so, there is a lot of excess in Idaho government. I am going to approach it with the default that we want to get rid of the inefficiencies. There is overspending. The evidence is there that the budget has grown by a factor over inflation and population, 60% in the last 6 years, 214% in the last 20 years. That is beyond what is efficient growth or conservative budgeting in the Idaho process.
Okay, let's do this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you are 100% right that there are people that over ask and overspend in departments. okay, let's use water.
Sure.
Okay. The Department of Water Resource what agency is that under? Or is it just a separate department? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Department of Natural Resources.
Sure. Okay, great. How do we determine then what should be cut?
Listen to IFF.
Okay. How does IFF determine? Like if we start talking about soil and water,
Look,
how do they determine? Because you guys cut a lot of stuff, which is fine. Like I don't know anything about these things. I'm just trying to figure out how you determine. Like if you and I sat down, you're like, okay, Matt, this is this is how we bang it out. Because one, we can't trust the department heads, the quote so-called experts. We can't trust JFAC. The people that make the decisions. So everybody making the budget is either, inappropriately motivated or ignorant. But we will figure out, and we're not going to like ask them, by the way, but we are going to figure out what's appropriate or not to cut. How do we determine that? And I'm not saying we can't. I'm just wondering how we do it.
Okay, here's some steps. Number one, identify work being done by the government that is outside the proper role of government. Medicaid expansion is one. Idaho launch. The CTE expansion is another. We can identify things that should have never been done in the first place. So that's a great set of cuts, is to get rid of programs that are outside the proper role. And conservatives, any conservative you ask can identify things that government's doing that they shouldn't be doing. So we did that. Number two, remember the governor, he said, we need an across-the-board 3% cut, but hold education harmless. So was that a rational approach to this? Or is he just playing favorites to education, whatever? We adopted that and said, all right, if you're going to cut 3%, you must recognize that there's excess in government of 3%. Let's apply it all across government. So we included that. Then we did targeted cuts to those agencies that have grown beyond the pale. Some of them have grown 18 times what other agencies have in percentage terms. And so we did these targeted cuts totaling $288 million. And then we did other cuts to agencies that have programs or things that we think are outside the pale. And so they're $189 million. $1.32 billion for Medicaid expansion, $288 million for targeted cuts, $189 million for agencies that have grown faster than the average, and then another $83 million for 3% cuts. That's how we get to $1.9 billion on a $14.5 billion budget. We could be at $12.6 billion, and it would be a savings of about $2,500 per household.
Okay. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to parse this out. Okay, so it sounds okay. Let's use this agency grew faster than other people.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we're going to cut the entirety or a lot of it, or we're going to hold it, hold it down.
Sure.
Okay. How do you know? Do you know why they grew? For instance, if I may, we have bigger and more damaging wildfires now than we had, let's say, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And to manage wildfires and prevention, management, response, the whole thing, that costs money. So we have this natural force blowing through our state that is theoretically going to require more resources to manage it. Say that grew faster than average. Okay. Yeah. So is there an idea here of this grew faster than average? And so the principle is if you grew faster than average, you inherently are being wasteful. Is that the idea that goes to we cut these because they grew fast?
Yeah. The Idaho Freedom Foundation didn't decide this year just to say, hey, you know what? We're going to look at budgets and, this one grew faster. And so we're going to cut that.
Yeah, sure.
We've been at this for 16 years. So we've been watching budgets grow. We've been watching how agencies grow. We do have expertise in this, in that we've seen how the budgeting process has worked. And so when I got into the legislature in 2014, the Department of Environmental Quality was at $53 million. A couple years ago during COVID, it blossomed to $250 million. Now it's back down to around $100 million. knowing what I know in serving on Environment, Energy, and Technology Committee and how that budget grew tells me that there are a lot of inefficiencies there because I do have some expertise in serving on that committee. It is largely funded by having a lot of federal rules come in, imposing mandates on Idaho to do this spending. Department of Environmental Quality exists for one reason only, and that is to enforce federal rules. We could get rid of it tomorrow, not impose that cost on Idaho taxpayers, and the Department of Environmental Quality work would then have to be done by the federal government. I don't think it's wise for Idaho to spend hundreds of millions of dollars of Idaho taxpayer money simply to enforce federal rules. If the federal government wants to enforce it, they ought to be the enforcers.
So, okay. So it sounds like you're saying, Matt, this department grew fast. So it jumped up during COVID. I don't know what was going on to necessitate the $250 whatever million.
That was a case in point. And so I'm saying that kind of energy and expertise we have across all these agencies. Fred Birnbaum has been analyzing budgets for 13 years for Idaho Freedom Foundation. You know, we have a Hillsdale PhD candidate going through the budgets with us too. And so if your suggestion embedded in your question is that we have to be subject matter experts on every single
that's not
please let me finish.
Please
let me finish.
You're putting words in my mouth.
Well,
what I've told you are not accurate.
The question is including the implication that if you don't have expertise in an agency, then you cannot suggest a cut. I push back against that.
That's not true. Yeah. That's flat out not true.
That we have expertise in budgeting. We have expertise in analyzing budgets for years. And I don't think anyone would deny that the Idaho spending problem is created by the legislature over budgeting for years now, for decades now. And so when you look at our Idaho budget growing by how much it has, there are room for cuts. Absolutely, we're going to suggest. Are we going to get it perfect every time? No, maybe we suggested to cut Department of Health and Welfare not enough, while we suggested cutting another agency too much. Fine. You know, we are making a recommendation to the legislature, and we are saying with complete confidence that $1.9 billion is able to be cut from Idaho's budget, which would represent the overspending and overgrowth of Idaho government. Now, if they want to tinker with what areas that comes from, fine. But I am very confident in our recommendations. We have used our expertise and looked through the budgets and looked through the trends and said, you know what? This is what a conservative budget for Idaho looks like. And if somebody wants to come and nitpick and say, well, you didn't treat soil and conservation right. Well, fine, go there and say you're expert in soil and conservation, who, by the way, has an incentive to say that everything they do is just glorious. We'll say that we cut them too much. You know what? Every agency will say that. Every expert will come and say, oh, you're cutting ours too much.
Okay. And again, that's all fine, right? But what I would ask you to please stop doing is saying that I'm implying an answer, which I am not. The answer is, if you're saying, look, man, we don't have to be subject matter experts to understand budget trends. Okay, I'm not telling you you're wrong. I can only say this so many times, but I would ask you to please just stop repeating that, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to understand how you arrived at these things so I can orient myself properly to either agree or disagree privately with what you're doing. But you got to stop saying, hey, Matt, implied you're saying this or implied you're saying that. I'm not implying anything. I'm trying to figure out, are you concerned with this? And what it sounds like you're saying is, look, we have budget experts. Great. We have budget experts that have been looking at Idaho stuff for over a decade. Okay, great. And they're not like soil and water conservation experts, but they are experts at looking at trends of government spending. And they also take insights from people within the department in the event that they reach out. And this person, whoever they might be, is like, hey, man, like, I'm just sitting around. Like, we got some fat we can trim here. Okay, great. No problem. And then you guys are saying, when we look at these other things, and we have confidence that based on our budget experts, that are looking at these trends. We can cut these things with no, I presume, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I presume you're not looking to decrease the quality of life of any Idahoan, right? So it's like, listen, we're not trying, or actually, I think that's an inappropriate assumption, because you guys are not concerned specifically with decreasing quality of life. You're concerned with taxpayer dollars and abiding by the Constitution.
We're looking at increasing the quality of life for Idahoans.
Okay. But the priority is adhering to the rule of law and not wasting taxpayer dollars, right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. So that's the primary thing. And ultimately down the line, you're like, if we do that, the quality of life of Idahoans will likely increase. But anyway,
Sure.
but that's where we're going. So as we're talking through this, I should orient myself to when you say, hey, look, there's soil and conservation pops up 3 times. I should not wonder, hey, who did they talk to about the phosphates? What I should understand you saying is, hey, man, Ron is likely looking at this saying, soil, let's pick on soil and water. Soil and water is appearing 3 times, and their budget may have grown faster than inflation. And I shouldn't worry in this conversation about what necessarily has driven that. What I should orient myself to is that Ron, as a principal, will say, if you're increasing faster than inflation, or if, the federal government is involved in this some way, there are probably cuts we can make here. Is that an appropriate kind of principal orientation?
I think that is.
Great. God bless it. We got there.
Yeah.
Yes.
But notice that what we've done is a lot closer look and a lot more technical and fair and efficiency seeking than a governor who says 3% across the board.
I have no idea. If you're saying what we are doing, if you're saying notice, Matt, I don't know. If you're saying, hey, I think what we've done is more appropriate than what the governor has done, okay, that's fine.
And, I served on the JFAC committee for a few years, and I see how the process works and leads to this overspending. So my skepticism is well earned. And,
I'm sure.
When I see budget recommendations come in, I know that by and large, they are bloated. And the reason why is because of the incentives of the askers, the lack of expertise of the appropriators, and the process which rewards higher appropriations. You are not going to get in trouble from the teachers as a legislator if you vote for every education budget. You vote against one, you're going to get in trouble from the teachers, and it's going to make your next election hard. I've seen it, I've been there, and that's why education gets tons of funding, even though their results are flat. They say, we need more money. You give them more money, still 32% proficiency on math and reading, still 32%. It's been that way for 10 years. We've grown the budget from education in the early 2000s to, that was around $1 billion. Now it's $3.1 billion. We've got no increase in performance. Let's try school choice.
Let me ask you something with this. Are you aware of the governor's order from 2018 regarding nuclear education?
Nuclear? Oh, is this working through INL? I'm not familiar with the exact.
No. Former Governor Butch Otter had an executive order in 18 that had 3 specific things. It was like, look, a number of things. But one of them was that the State Department of Education is to make a, nuclear research and collaboration. So like, for instance, Idaho ISU, they have a nuclear reactor on campus. They have, technical certifications, undergraduates, graduate degrees, all these things, and they work with INL. So that was something that didn't exist when the budget was $1 billion, right? It is something that exists now. So when we look at just K through 12 metrics of you're saying like, hey, look, we had this proficiency then, we have this proficiency now, but we haven't got anything for this money. It's like, well, you're only looking at one thing, right? You're looking at like math or reading proficiency. You're not looking at, higher education and nuclear reactor training that is, now going to sweep the country. And Idaho is well positioned to be, easily the best, if not like the second best place to train and research these things. So how are we supposed to, how do I orient myself when you say, hey, we haven't gotten anything we haven't gotten anything for this number, but we have a lot of things that aren't encapsulated in the K through 12, I don't know, metrics, let's say.
I'd respond to that by saying that increasing the scope of activity while leaving 2/3 of kids under proficiency in math and reading is not a trade-off that's worth having. That, oh, yeah, we have a few kids coming out with some nuclear training. We still have 2/3 of kids that are under proficiency in math and reading. Not acceptable.
Okay, but I hear that. And if you're saying, hey, man, stop everything until we increase this number. Okay, hear that loud and clear. The question more specifically is, you're criticizing the increase in budget by saying nothing has happened, yet we've tripled the budget. And what I'm saying is, but things have happened, and whether appropriate or not, understood. You're like, hey, essentially we have to acknowledge we have increased the scope and things that we've done with our education system. Like the nuclear program's a perfect example. That didn't exist.
We have tripled the spending.
Yeah.
Have we tripled the scope?
No.
Have we tripled the outcomes?
No.
Have we tripled anything? We have tripled the spending. We have not tripled any of the positive outcomes here. Have you added a program? Yeah. Has it helped some kids? Yes. Has it helped others? No. And so how about we try a paradigm shift and say, you know what? What if parents controlled their kids' education decisions and didn't have to pay double if they chose an option that was outside the public school system? Let's try school choice. Let's see what happens to public education when faced with competition. And I'll tell you what, the economic evidence is clear. Where school choice has been tried, public education improves as well.
Look, that's fine if you feel that you're like, hey, look, this is a thing. I'm just saying, we should probably step away from the articulation that we've tripled something and we haven't gotten, nothing else is different, because that's fundamentally not like the cost of a 2x4.
Now you're putting words in my mouth. I said, have we tripled outcomes?
No.
Have we tripled the scope? I said, have we tripled anything?
Have we gotten anything in return? And I'm saying we have increased the scope. Now, if we want to say, have we tripled anything? Let's adjust the number for inflation. Let's adjust the number for, cost of building, right? Like I was talking to somebody a little while ago about stretching Highway 55 south. And they were saying, yeah, we could have done it 10 years ago, but now it's like 10 times the cost, just because of cost of land, cost of building, cost of all of these different things. And they're like, so now it's in effect impossible. It's financially impossible to have another north-south parallel through the Treasure Valley. And I was like, damn, that sucks. So 20 years ago, the cost of maintaining a roof or, windows is not the same cost as it is today or was last year. So every roof that got done last year, we could make the argument, it cost 10x what it cost 20 years ago. Did I get 10x the roof? Of course you didn't get 10x the roof. That's the nature of inflation. So you're obviously intelligent enough to adjust for inflation. So when you say we haven't gotten triple, you and I both know it's not a triple. It's not a triple. We have things like maintenance or increased scope of work.
Oh, and in our analysis, we absolutely incorporate inflation and population growth. But did you know that not every agency should grow by the inflation rate? There are some things that, they've had contracts for 10 years. They haven't changed with inflation. Therefore, their costs shouldn't increase with inflation. There's some things like Idaho Public...
What about salaries?
Hold on. There's things like Idaho Public Television that serves the population of Idaho. When the population goes up, that doesn't increase their cost. It's the same signal. So using inflation and population growth, yes, absolutely, we adjust for those. But in some cases, that gives a little more to agencies than they actually need. So it is slightly a bias towards increased government spending. But we are talking, by and large, about budgets that have grown beyond inflation and population.
Sure.
And so the scope of government, the growth of agencies beyond population inflation, absolutely, we took that into account with our budget recommendations. You betcha.
I understand largely what you're saying, right? Like
Yeah.
But first off, we also understand that COLA adjustments, just cost of living. Like if you were like, hey man, you're going to make the same money you made 10 years ago, nobody would tolerate that in private or public.
That's right. That's the inflation aspect of it.
Right. So when you're saying there are departments that shouldn't increase at all, because like it costs the same to broadcast, let's take out.
I'm just saying that inflation might overstate how much they should grow. I'm not saying they shouldn't grow at all. I'm just saying that inflation, just using inflation as a broad measure, some agencies that would be an
inaccurate. Yeah, sure.
So
sure.
That's all.
But again, with your tripling thing, can we just agree that like if we were being honest about the cost of everything,
sure,
as a budget tripled, if we know we increase the scope of work and we know that the cost of maintaining the system increased, probably I would argue beyond the pace of inflation, then we really shouldn't be looking for a tripling of something. We're like, well, it's really like it's like a 50% increase or something.
And that's what I said, Matt. I said that anyone outside the education establishment, if they look at the Idaho education budget tripling over those years, have we gotten a triple in the scope of services? No. Have we gotten a triple in inflation and costs? No. They would say, the average person outside the education establishment was saying, we're not getting a return on our money. Tripling it has not done anything for outcomes. We haven't tripled scope. We haven't, it hasn't been justified by inflation or population. Government is growing too fast. That budget is growing too much for what we're getting for it. I want to see increases in outcomes. They keep saying that Idaho cannot improve because they don't have enough money. Well, you know what? We've been giving more and more money. Actually, giving is the wrong word. We've been taking taxpayer dollars and allocating it to this for decades now with zero improvement. We're told that more money improves it. It doesn't improve. What are we to do with that? Paradigm shift. Let's try education choice, see if we can get some improvement.
Here's a question for you about this. How do we know if how do we know if that's a better system?
Let's find out.
No. We already have the schools. The schools have already existed.
Like, no. Wait a minute. Listen to this. That when I was in school, I'm old enough to remember when we had overhead projectors in the rooms. Right?
You brought this up, the bowling alley thing.
Yeah. It is a relevant example. Bowling alleys got rid of overhead projectors 30 years before schools did.
But these are different
functions.
Schools
don't have an incentive to innovate. Now, wait a minute. I have no idea the innovation that will come when we have a true school choice system. We will have schools that maybe I can't even imagine that are dedicated to nuclear education, for example.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe that happens because somebody sees an opportunity and says, you know what, we have a lot of kids interested in this. This is the energy of the future. We're going to focus on a science and technology education and give that opportunity to students. Now, I would argue, and I think the evidence would support me in that the market will be more responsive to parents and students than a public education system where every decision is filtered through bureaucracies, personal incentives, agency incentives, and an appropriation system where the information doesn't flow as well.
When we talk about the failings of public education, we use numbers like proficiency. That's not something that is being applied to the private sector.
Absolutely.
So how are we to understand, aside from just attendance, how are we to understand whether or not we are defending my dollars that are taken through threat of imprisonment to fund these schools? I'm not saying we should or shouldn't. I'm just saying, how do I understand if we're like, hey, neighborhood public school, you're doing a trash job. You're doing a trash job. You're only like 50% proficient. Okay. Private school right next door that gets my tax dollars, I have no idea what your proficiency is. How am I supposed to understand that as far as like, even if we say I was a raving school choice fan and I'm like, you just wait 10 years. This is going to be lit. You have no idea how incredible this is going to be. And you, Ron, you're like, really? What do you mean? I'm like, it's going to be incredible. I'm like, how are we going to know? And I say, we won't, but it'll be awesome. How are we going to know if we have a metric that everybody says that you yourself quote, this is a failing because of this number, but we are not going to understand that number anywhere else?
We won't, but it'll be awesome.
Oh my God.
It's going to be awesome, Matt. And here's why.
Oh my God. Okay. No, look, hit me with why. I was making a joke. It was funny that I just wasn't expecting you to like repeat it because I was just being an idiot. Okay, great. Help me understand that then.
You're being rude.
No, I was making a joke. I thought you were joking back with me.
I was. Yeah, but
okay.
Okay. And so
then I'm not, if you know I'm joking, I'm not being rude. I'm just joking around. I thought you were joking with me. And if you were joking, then I laughed. We're on the same page. We won't know. That's actually how it works?
No, we will absolutely know.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well then.
You know what? People vote with their feet all the time.
Sure.
What kind of a restaurant fails?
No idea.
One that serves bad food and is too high priced and sucks or whatever.
Yeah.
What kind of a public school or what kind of a private school will fail?
I don't know.
One that sucks, that doesn't provide the education parents want and costs too much. Competition will drive out the bad ones, will reward the good ones. Now, what kind of public school fails?
Don't know.
None. They never fail. They always keep getting the money. Parents are frustrated with it. Without school choice, how do you deal with a public school system that's not serving your student?
How do you deal with it?
You're stuck. I'm saying, let's give choice a chance. And you know what? As parents choose, the money will go to the ones that are doing the job the best because parents care about their kids. I have a lot of faith in parents caring about their kids, especially the ones who exercise school choice. But here's the benefit. Those parents who may not be as in tune with what's going on in education and they leave their kids in public schools, those kids will benefit too. Because like I said before, the evidence is clear that public schools improve when there's school choice and they face competition because they don't want to lose students. More importantly, they don't want to lose the money that is going to private schools at that point.
Okay. This is the question though. Why have a quantitative metric that you can take to the taxpayers and say, this school is either, everybody points to like, this school is failing.
No, okay, I understand. You want a standardized test that shows that.
No, I don't want anything. I'm wondering why we have.
You're asking for some sort of quantitative on this, and I'm saying that.
Hang on, let me finish my question. Why have a quantitative metric for one system and not have it for the other? I'm not advocating for both having it. I'm not advocating for neither having it. I'm asking why have these different things?
Well, a quantitative. The reason why we have a quantitative measure in public schools is because it is hard to figure out whether or not education is doing well. The quantitative measure, probably not that accurate, but you know what? We don't need it in a private school choice. I don't need to have quantitative measures on restaurants or whether they're good or not. But you know what? The market has even provided that through Yelp and other ratings. And so when I'm making a decision where to go eat, I'll go and look at the ratings. You know, who says that some standardized test produced by government with the biases of woke ideology in it is going to be a better measure than parents voting with their dollars, voting with their feet, looking at ratings, talking to other parents? I'm saying that the state established measures, the traditional measures of whether public education is good or not, maybe aren't efficient measures in and of themselves.
So the bottom line is when you quote the proficiencies, you're quoting.
I knew you were going to do that. I knew it. That you're going to say that when I talk about the proficiencies being at 32%, I just dissed on the measures, right? How else am I going to judge public education? By people wanting to leave. People are asking for school choice. Why do they want to leave? They look at the proficiency measures, but maybe they look at other things. They feel like their kids aren't being served very well. So we deal with what we have. And I'm saying that private choice has been shown to give better results, better go-on rates, better success in college after the fact, all of those things are improved with private school choice.
Well, fundamentally, I think we could agree that those are not, go on rates or going to college, right? Mm-hmm. If you're dealing with the private school system in the last, let's say, 20 years, my kids were in a private Catholic school when we were back still in my former state. And my wife and I were SAT tutors, so we understood the kids within that system. And naturally, if you're somebody who has $20,000 a year to go to these schools, then you're likely somebody who's going to have the resources and desire to have them go on to college. Like, okay, great. Like, that makes perfect sense. So to say, hey, private schools have a higher go-on rate, or a higher college matriculation rate than the public school, and therefore we want to insert that option for the public school kids. I understand that, but wouldn't one of the problems be that the fact that people are going off to college isn't just a function of the quality of education they received as youth? It's also a function of, at the very least, resources available. And to have somebody go through a system and say, okay, well, like 10 out of 10 kids go to undergraduate, let's just throw this 11th kid in there, but single parent like I had, or, no resources like I had, you're like, well, it doesn't really work that way, because like these 10 kids their parents were paying $20,000 a year. They have the money to send the kids to college. So it's not just a function of the school. It's a function of, like families.
Oh, yeah. That when you can't suss out that it's all because of one factor, but that doesn't diminish the fact that one factor matters, that there's lots of factors that lead kids to going on. What I'm saying is that it's good for those kids in private school, and it's also good for kids in public school. The go-on rate goes up there too. So just because you can't suss out the exact quantitative effect of this on one particular kid or one particular population doesn't mean it's not a benefit.
No, and I'm definitely not saying, and I get what you're saying. The thing that I just can't tease this one out, which is there is nothing we can point to. Like, as defending the taxpayer dollar, there is nothing we can point to help them sleep better at night, knowing that, the money was taken from them and it is going to education. We know that people attend places that are determined to be education-based or articulate to be education-based, but there is no actual like, hey man, they are doing this with your money. Parents arrive with a receipt saying, this is the receipt we had from going to Matt Todd University. But the taxpayer doesn't know what happened there. They just have to say like, well, the parent liked it, so it was worth it. And that, like, I'm pro education. I'm totally fine with educational contractors. I was a private educator. And I would put my SAT program up against any other SAT program. Hands down, I'll slay. Okay. The thing was, though, I knew I was going to slay because the numbers were in my favor. Mm-hmm. And did the kids love it? Hell yeah, they loved it. We had a great time. Like, imagine me with a bunch of 16-year-olds. We had a great time. But I had that number to say, like, I do better than X. And if you want to be better than me, that's fine. You better beat this number, though. And I don't understand how I'm supposed to view this as an Idaho taxpayer. Like, it's very, very tough for me. And again, that's coming from a private educator and somebody who if you told me, like, hey, Matt, look, here's the deal. This is what we're doing. This school, it actually has a 45% proficiency. Public school only has 30. That's what your money's going towards. I'd be like, here's my money. There. They got a better system. They figured it out. Full send. Or just measure increase in, reading and math from beginning of year to end of year. Hey, Matt, the public school, they only went up 100 points in reading to math on average. Okay, so we're not even gauging high-end success. We're just gauging improvement. Private school, they went up 150 points, arbitrary units, whatever it is. I'm like, take my money. I don't know how to understand this as a taxpayer who's like, okay, so the only thing you're saying is that we're going to gauge whether people go there or not.
Okay. It's a benefit for taxpayers for two reasons. Number one is it will be less costly to educate kids in the private school system. The tax credit is about, 40% of what the the cost is of educating the average public school kid. And let's remember, it's a tax credit too. It's saying that if you educate your kid outside the public school system, you pay less in taxes. Part of it, it's refundable, but by and large, most users of the tax credit are just simply paying less in taxes. They're not getting a check from government to pay for their private education.
But some people do.
Some people do.
Yeah.
So part of it's refundable, part of it's not. But in any case, it's a lot less expensive to educate kids in the private system than the public system. So it will be a savings of taxpayer dollars. And I trust the parents to choose the best education for their kids more than a taxpayer who's funding a public education system that says, I want your kids in my public schools because public school rocks. Well, I haven't seen the evidence for that, but I have seen the evidence for a lot of parents who feel frustrated by the public school system, so much so that they want to support a private school choice option and will take it even though it is a fraction of the public education system cost. It's a win-win.
Yeah, again, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I had, again, to be clear, I had taken my kids out of the public school, before I moved here. Now I have kids engaged in the charter school system, which I think is great.
And therefore you got to double pay, didn't you? You had to pay taxes into the system that educated public school kids, and you had to pay for the private tuition. How fair is that?
I have no idea.
It's not.
Okay.
That's the answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I have the same options that other people had, right? And I wanted it, like, you get a burger, but like you want a burrito too. Whatever. We don't have to get in that analogy. Fair or not, you're saying it's not fair. It's none of my affair, right? Again, but it sounds like the situation is this. There is a system that some people don't like, and that's fine. And I think there's plenty of fault and problems within the public school system. 100%. One of the biggest issues I found is even if somebody comes in and they're like, hey man, my teacher changed my life. My teacher did, it was incredible. And that's, let's say that's my lived experience. And you come in and you say, you know what, man, my teacher abused me and my teacher did these terrible things to me and I will never recover. We're both right. We are both 100% right. And for the people that have had a hard time or bad things have befallen them in the public school system, they are 1,000% right. And yeah, like I think one of the problems is it all falls under public education. It's like there's no conversation to even be had at this point. If, say, you have somebody who's like, I'm going to start a podcast and I'm only going to bring on people that love the public school system. It's like, okay, all those people are right. They love it. That's fine. But I start a podcast. I'm like, I'm going to bring all the people that the public school system failed or something bad happened. We would also be right. Right. So it's almost like this is why I'm having a hard time orienting even what to think about the public school system at this point. It's like within West Ada, 200 people a year graduate with their high school diploma and their college degree as an associate's degree. It's like, okay, that's a public school. Public schools, the West Ada School District, they are, I think it's like $5,500 per student per year. They're very cheap from the state. They're large. They eliminated redundancies. They combined districts. They drove down the price almost to the exact price of the tax credit. Okay. So it's like, great. That's great. They did a great job and they have all of these great school options. But then you look at the worst public school district within Idaho and they're probably taking way more money than West Ada takes. They're producing bad results, or the people that they're trying to educate are starting from a lower point or they have no resources, whatever it might be. It's like, it's all part of it. So part of the problem with education, public education, it's this catch-all that we're supposed to figure out if we like it or not. And it's like, dude, this is damn impossible. Like, it's impossible to flush this one out in my mind. And I spend a lot of time thinking about education and I just can't figure out how to orient it. I hear what you're saying. And if you truly feel like, you're like, Matt, look, if people attend the private schools, then it means it's a good education system. That's it. That's all. And no, the taxpayer does not should not have, nor should they be able to demand a quantitative value analogous to public school. It's like, okay, man, like, I don't know anything about this. I want the best education system, funding, bang for the buck for every dollar that gets taken from me under threat of imprisonment. I want the best of that. I just don't understand how to work this out where it's like, it's just attendance.
I don't think it's too much to ask for that parents have a choice, and that that school district that's rocking it,
sure.
They don't have anything to worry about with private choice.
Yeah.
The school system that is sucking, they have a lot to worry about if there's school choice. The point is that you get better results. Why do we think that the government-run school system is the best ever? Why do you need, you keep mentioning the quantitative results. Well, the quantitative results may or may not be accurate. Who knows? But I will know that if parents want to exercise private school choice, then they're doing it for a reason. And why trap kids and parents into a system that they have to pay for, and that if they want something else, they have to pay twice? Give choice a chance. Let them try it. The costs are too high. If the public school system is as inefficient as I think, and is not serving the kids as well, in my opinion, then we are trapping kids and we are hurting kids who could be helped by having more education freedom.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen if we exercise school choice?
Wasting money. I mean, I don't know. I haven't thought about it that much. I presume it's wasting. Well, no.
You're singing my tune, Matt. You're singing my tune. No, it's wasting money.
Okay. Yes. But I think that's discounting the problem it presents in people's lives later on. For instance, I initially think saving money. I had this girl that I tutored once, and this really broke my heart. This girl, she's junior, trying to go to college, right? And I come in and we're working through math stuff. She was in algebra 2. So like on a fine track, not a crazy math person. And I was working with her on basic, it was like algebra or something, and she couldn't do like basic operations. Like she didn't understand fractions. And I was like, you're in algebra 2. Like, what do you mean you don't understand fractions? She had gone to a charter school, this like very wooey, kind of left-wingy Berkeley charter school that was like, we're going to learn through going outside, right? So they would like go to the park and they'd count trees. It's like, how many trees do you see? And like, what if we cut the tree in half? And I don't even know what the curriculum was, but the parents, it broke my heart talking to the parents too, because they're like, yep, she lost effectively 3rd to 5th grade because the parents thought they were doing the right thing by sending the daughter to the charter school. Mm-hmm. The charter school is run by a bunch of wackadoos. And, so yeah, I would say money's a problem, but I think that discounts the potential this girl had as a youth. And, that scares me. That's it. I think it's really just the potential for human suffering.
My kids all went to public school. And like most parents in Idaho would say, oh, our schools were different. Our schools were good. We had good teachers. And we did have some good teachers. We had some bad teachers too.
Sure.
My daughter came home 3rd grade, and they were, was it 3rd? Might have been 2nd. I can't remember. But they were adding 2-digit numbers. And so me, Dad, going through it with her, she shows me the old method I had, stacking it. You add the things, carry the number, add it. And I said, that's great, good. She goes, but then there's this. And so she's doing the stick figures and doing this. And then there's another system where they divide out the tens and the singles and they add those together. And so she shows me all of these methods. Mm-hmm. And I go, well, which one do you like the best? She goes, stacking. I go, well, then just do that. She goes, no, we have to show 3 different ways on the test. I go, why? She goes, it's Common Core. We have to show 3 different ways. So my daughter was learning, 2/3 of what she was learning was not needed because there was an easier, more efficient way. That's a public school system that is imposing Common Core on students. When I went to the legislature, I wanted to get rid of Common Core. You know what the first comment was when I said, here's the bill to repeal Common Core? Will it cost us federal money? And I well, hell yeah, it will. But that was a bill killer. They want the federal money. They don't care about the kids.
Yeah. My kids are a lot younger than yours, but when my kindergartner, oldest, went to kindergarten, we started in the public school. We were in an area of high quality public schools. And I say quotes because here's something that's actually very interesting. The area that we were in had a very high college matriculation rate. And, I was like, wow, this is great. Like, we moved to that area because the school districts were presumably great. Ignorance on my part, I don't know why I didn't realize it, but I was an SAT tutor. The people in that area, one, generally parents that were highly educated, well-heeled, spending on average between $10,000 and $14,000 a year on auxiliary education. So not only could the parents themselves tutor the kids, right? Like I'm sure you could tutor your daughter, but they also had money to hire outside help. So the results of the public school system in that area were not actually the results of the education system. They were the results of the community and the resources the communities were putting into education. But of course, the school system was happy to like take the results and be like, haha, like 99% of our kids go to, college of some sort, right? Sure. You find this out later on, obviously, but they started him on some kind of goofy, arc of the problem. I'm very sure, like stacking numbers, analogous things like that. The biggest problem that came from all this is my wife and I, who are educators, are looking at this like, what the are we looking at? What are you guys doing? You went from having, let's say 30 kids in class, one teacher, 30 kids, and 30 sets of parents at home that could help teach the kids. And then you transition to one teacher, 30 kids, and 30 parents who had no idea to help their first grader, right? And that, it was like, I had such a disdain for that. It was so frustrating to see that play out. It's like, what are you doing? And ultimately, you had kids that were like falling between the cracks. Some of the teachers didn't really understand what was going on. And I was like, my God, man. So I already told you, I ended up pulling the kids. So like, I have an appreciation for that kind of thing where, you do have mandates from people that perhaps are well-intentioned, let's be as charitable as possible. But it's like, dude, what are you doing?
Yeah. What you allude to is right, that it's not just the teacher, not just the school, not just the system. Peers matter a lot. Families matter, income matters, whether or not they have books at home, the engagement level of the parents. Those are all bigger factors than probably the public school. And the Coleman Report of 1966 says as much, that the external factors to public school matter more. All I'm saying is that, if the public school is having a hard time reaching a lot of the kids, let's try private choice. And this isn't trying it out of a black box and not knowing what's going to happen. There is economic evidence out there that shows both the public and private benefits of private school choice.
Let me ask you something. And again, we're trying it whether we want to or not. Like we're already like school choice is already a thing, right?
Sure.
What could, if you were to tell me, and you're like, you and I are organizing this, and you're like, look, man, let's give it a shot. I'm like, you know what, Ron? Let's give it a shot. Not that we have a choice, because it's already there. Okay, let's give it a shot. And you say, I think it could do these things, and that would be great. I'm like, okay, that could be cool. And if I followed up with like, how do we know in 10 years if this worked or not? What are the things we should look at to know whether or not this works or not?
I think a standardized test, which has been the measure, I think is inefficient. I think they could be biased, and
sure.
We've seen it abused and cheated on, like teachers in Georgia filling out their kids' things just to show that their results are better. I think parental satisfaction is a good indicator. How well the students do after public school. Do they go on? Do they succeed in college? Going on is not just the measure. And so there are other ways to look at this, but I think that it will become very apparent very quickly whether or not private choice is working.
How? Like if we just look at elementary schools, right? Like I got little kids. If we don't have a go on?
Do you think parents are going to take their kids out of elementary school, see them suffer, and then go, well, I'm sticking with this private school thing because I care about private school choice? No, they care about their kids. And so we'll see some private schools fail. We'll see some succeed. We'll see some public schools lose a lot of students. We'll see some lose hardly any at all. I think the process of going through this will be, by and large, beneficial for kids. Will every kid benefit? No, but not every kid is benefiting now. Will more kids benefit than not? I think so. I think kids will do better in a private school choice system, and the evidence shows than they will in strictly a public school system with zero choice. Imagine if your groceries were provided the way public schools are provided. You pay a tax and you get to go collect your groceries from one place. One place. You get to go collect your groceries. Now, if you want finer groceries, you can spend double and go and buy at Trader Joe's or the co-op or wherever you want to go. But you spend exorbitant amount of tax dollars to go get your free groceries. What kind of groceries are you going to expect from the government store? And by the way, if you're upset with them, you can go to the store board and speak for 3 minutes at a time and tell them how you're frustrated with the potato chip selection. What kind of system do you think you're going to have over time with a grocery system where they know that that's where you get your groceries and they're going to get paid every time?
Okay. I hear that. I presume you are aware that we are an open enrollment, meaning like you could live in Eagle and go to Middleton schools if you wanted to.
If you drive them yourself.
Well, that's how, private schools work too. So the point is, like, we have online schools,
but I'll have
we have
money
charter
to drive
schools.
My kids.
Great.
Okay.
But we also have charter schools. So like we have a dump truck. And again, we don't have to rehash this. Like we have, I think, like 8 different school choice options in the absence of the school choice tax credit. Be that as it may, we are doing school choice, whether anybody likes it or not, right? It was passed into law. It was signed into law. Dollars are going out. How do we look at like attendance in private school to measure success? Like you're saying it's going to be great. I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying to understand, how do we at the end of 10 years determine whether or not it was good or not?
Okay, this is the classic, there's no accountability in private school choice. I mean, if I bring a school choice bill, they'll say, where's the accountability? How do we know if they're doing well? Well, you know what has zero accountability now? Public schools. Public schools, they can serve you crap and they still get the education money. There is no accountability. Yeah, you can look at test scores and whatever. What if the test scores suck? Nothing happens. There's no accountability in the public school system. So don't give me this, there's no accountability in private school choice. There's a hell of a lot more accountability when parents have the freedom to take their kids to a variety of different private schools, including the public school, than having zero choice at all.
Ron,
so the accountability...
You're arguing with somebody else. No, I'm not presenting...
Don't take this as me talking. No. You talked hypothetically, so I'm saying hypothetically. I'm not attacking you. I'm just attacking.
Just tell me the attendance is the thing. I'm not saying it has no accountability. I'm saying, how do I know as a taxpayer in 10 years if it was a good? I don't want to call it an experiment. I don't want to be disparaging, but like if the run of school choice was successful, and you're saying let's give it a shot. I'm like, okay, we're giving it a shot whether we want to or not. How if we're speaking to the Idaho taxpayer right now, and you say we're going to give it a shot, and this is how you know if it was good or not. What do you tell them?
Oh, excellent. Okay, I'll give you 2 examples. Private school choice is introducing free market economics into an education system. It's giving people the option to choose for themselves the best education system. Other examples of markets at work achieving good results. What restaurants succeed? The ones that please the most people. And so what restaurants fail? The ones that don't please people. So the ones that perform less, and we don't have a standardized test for how well a restaurant runs, do we? We don't have some sort of a metric for judging how well a restaurant runs. Government doesn't judge restaurants, but the restaurants are judged every day by people's choices. So you'll see the private schools succeed the ones who best please the parents in their education choices. The ones who fail are the ones that don't. We already have been doing private school choice for decades at the higher education level. That kids get Pell Grants, they get federal student loans. They can use those at any university. Which universities get the most kids? The ones that please them for the best bargain for their dollar. And so we have private school choice in the higher education system. And we don't have people wringing their hands saying, oh, how do we know that CSI is the best one? How do we know that this one's the best one? Well, people are voting with their feet. They're taking their federal subsidies, their federal grants, and their federal loans, and they're choosing the best school that they can, or that they want, and they make their choice. And I think that in higher education, there's a variety of choices. You can go to different expertises, different qualities, different cost levels, and I don't think people look at the higher education system and say, oh, it is a failed system. It's working more efficiently than the public education system because of the choice available.
You're saying the private higher education system?
I'm saying private and public higher education. It is a system that has both public institutions and private institutions, but you have students who have choice to go to which one. And a lot of times these public institutions are a lot less expensive than the private ones. Yet you still see some students choose private with their federal dollars. And you see some choose public with their federal dollars.
So again, in one encapsulating this, you're saying we'll know if this is good or bad. Like, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Yeah,
is it like however many exist will be the evidence for high quality education? Like, because if we have a lot of restaurants, you're like, hey, a lot of people like going to restaurants. We have a lot of restaurants. That means all the food is good. Is that like what you're saying?
Oh, we'll see trials and failures. We'll see some private schools set up and go, you know what, we're gonna be the welding school. We're gonna teach welding, and the costs are too high for the benefits, and they'll go out. You know, that we'll see a variety of different options. But what I argue is I don't think we'll see every private school fail and every student want to come back to public school. I think we'll see some private schools who succeed very well, that are providing a great bargain for the dollars that their students are spending. Yeah. And so, that is the metric, that where the students want to go, where the parents want to take their kids, and where they are choosing the best education. I think that the proof is in the eating, right? And so I think that's what we'll see.
Well, the good news is people way smarter than me are working this stuff out because it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me here.
I'm like William F. Buckley. I would rather be governed by the first 400 names in the telephone book than by 400 experts from Harvard, because experts come up with all sorts of fantastic plans of how things should work and how to manipulate it and become technical and technocrats. But markets drive good decisions. And so things that work for people will succeed, things that don't work will fail, and you don't need an expert making all these decisions about where every dollar goes.
That's fine, right? And again, I was engaged in private education. Like, I get it. I guess it sounds like at the end of the day, you're like, look, there really is, aside from the existence of schools with people going to them, private schools with people going to them, there is no metric by which we could gauge whether school choice worked or not, right? Or it has worked or not, or is efficient or whatever. Like, the fact that a school exists means somebody wants to pay the money for it. And that's it.
Yeah. Matt, do you think the public school system is excellent and efficient right now?
I mean, no. Let's just say no.
How do you know that?
Well, you stated some test scores earlier.
Yeah, but how do you know that it's not being very well? So test scores are the answer?
Well, let me rephrase my answer. I have had experience with 2 public schools in the state of Idaho. And so if you want me to answer broadly about, quote, the public education system, including, I presume you're just saying K through 12 and not like higher ed and everything else. I've had experiences both ways in my 2 schools.
So is the Idaho public education working well, efficient, and excellent?
I don't know. If you want me to just say what I've experienced at my 2 schools, I can say I'm not super displeased with them.
If you don't know, then should we keep funding it the way we're funding it?
Me not knowing is not a motivation for taking a course of action. It's my ignorance.
Okay. So, how are we supposed to know if the public education is doing well?
Well, but presumably we aggregate data and figure out
what data.
That's a great question. If you just want to take attendance, the vast majority of people attend public schools.
Attendance is mandatory. So
I'm
just looking at the public schools.
That's not true at all. Okay. It's not mandatory.
Okay, I'm looking at the public school system. So you're saying that because homeschool is not vastly utilized, that public schools are doing well?
No, I'm just saying it's not mandatory.
Okay, fine. All right. So how do we know the public school system are working well?
That's a great question. How do we know?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
I'm the idiot, Ron. I'm the dude with a microphone and a camera.
Yeah,
you're the one saying, I believe you have said our public schools are failing. So you have a feeling on how you gauge success or failure. So you don't have to ask me. You can just say they are failing because of reason X.
Yeah.
What is that reason?
Yeah, and I think if we asked the average Idahoan, we did a poll, I think people would be largely like you, frustrated or not certain about whether public schools are doing well.
Well, we likely shouldn't just take a poll, right?
Yeah.
Because the governor took a poll and it was 6 out of every 7 person that responded said they didn't want school choice. But you probably don't want to gauge that as value with this program or not.
Yeah. So if we're continuing to fund 63% of our state general fund to public education, shouldn't we know if it's doing well?
Well, are you saying just shouldn't we know in general?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Nobody's arguing against that.
Yeah. So
what do you? I don't understand the point.
I'm asking, how do we know if it's doing well?
I think you used standardized tests.
No, not
right?
me. No. How does the average Idahoan know if public schools are doing well?
Standardized tests? I'm missing the point here, obviously.
Well, I'm just saying that, the chief argument against private school choice is how are we going to know if they're doing well? Well, nobody can tell me how they know if public schools are doing well.
You articulated the standardized test. That was your number one thing that you said we've tripled the dollars and we got no.
And you poo-pooed that.
No. But I'm saying that's what you have used yourself.
I know. That's what I'm saying. That my point here is that if standardized tests are the measure for public schools, they're failing. If you're saying that they're doing better because the scope is better or whatever, well, what's that metric? How do I know if they're doing well? And if you can't tell me how they're doing well, then you can't say that, well, we can't do private school choice because we won't know how well they're doing. Well, if you can't say how well public schools are doing, then you can't criticize private school choice that way either.
I think people are saying through standardized tests whether schools are being, that was the number one argument that I heard over the legislative session for school choice. So our schools are failing just like you did because of this test score. And so they're articulating a metric by which they can gauge success and failure. And they said, therefore, we should do this other thing. And when asked, okay, are we going to, if the public school's 30 and the private school's 40, that's a win, right? And they're like, no. Public schools are failing because of this test, but we don't want to apply that over here to the alternative. And so the question is, well, wait, how are we going to gauge if it's working or not?
I don't have to go to standardized tests to say public schools are failing.
Okay.
Level of public dissatisfaction, level of I don't know about public schools.
I don't think that my ignorance is an articulation of failure on the public school system's part.
I'm just talking about the average Idaho, not talking about you.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if people don't know or they have no inkling or if they're just simply frustrated with public schools, why not give private schools a choice? And if we start to impose the standardized test, which, by the way, might be a cause and a symptom of a failed public school system, we're imposing a public school regulation on private schools that might not be great for for a private school system. Because, for example, teachers often say that the tests drive the curriculum.
Yeah, I could see that. I've heard people say that before too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's evidence for that.
Sure.
So imposing that as a metric on private schools, this is why you get people pushing back against it, is a standardized test for private school curriculum or for private school outcomes will have to drive the private school curriculum to be like the public school curriculum, which is exactly why some parents wanted to leave. And so that's why there's pushback against the metric of the standardized test. But the good news is we don't have to have a standardized test to see whether parents like the system or not. And if you say they like it, but it's not doing well, that's not putting a lot of faith and trust in parents who care very much about their kids.
Yeah. And to be really clear, not all of my kids go to the neighborhood public school. I have kids at a charter school, and I did not need a standardized test involved there to say like, hey, I think this other option will be a better option, right? And let's give it a shot. So I agree with you. Like there is a value to understanding where people, matriculate and where people leave. Sure. There is an enormous value there. And I am absolutely somebody who's engaged in that. So if you just want to look like the neighborhood public school is down students because at least, my kid or kids because they left for something else in the absence of a test score. So again, I get what you're saying with that. And, perhaps there's just the reality of this is that it's complex and there's never going to be an answer. That it's like, people that want black and white will never have black and white. And people that want, 100% defense of every single dollar, they'll never get that because it's like, well, the parents are happy with it and the parents are happy with it. And that's why we take your $5,000. And like, that's it, man.
Yeah. And that's why there's a push for school choice at all, is because there is a level of dissatisfaction with public schools. Otherwise, school choice legislation wouldn't go anywhere. But there are enough people dissatisfied. And so that's another indicator of outcomes.
Ron, I feel like this whole conversation got derailed by school choice. It's a $50 million line item in the whole budget. And it's like, you know what I hated last legislative session? It sucked the oxygen out of the room. It's like, you couldn't even have a conversation with people aside from school choice. It's like, I
thought the whole conversation got derailed by soil experts. It doesn't take a soil expert to know the budget is bloated. It doesn't.
Listen, you and I could agree on that point 100%.
Yeah.
The problem with me understanding it is, how do we determine what the right fat to trim is?
Well,
like that's the only thing I'm trying to figure out.
Asking that question perpetuates a system of status quo. If I don't know enough to say this should be cut, then we better not cut it.
Can we just
If I don't know enough to increase the budget like they said, well, we better increase it. You need the 12th man, right? You need somebody there, the one juror who's going against everyone else to maybe ask the questions that go, maybe the status quo isn't the best thing there. And IFF proudly stands as that 12th juror to say, you know what, let's ask the questions. Let's put together a different alternative instead of the status quo where the governor asks for 4% more, the legislature gives them 5% more, and then here we are with a budget shortfall going, everyone pointing at each other. Bedke's pointing at the legislature's pointing at the governor's not pointing at anyone. I don't know what's going on, but we know the budget is bloated. Everyone knows it.
Well, man, as somebody who enjoys asking questions, I have a great appreciation for you standing there asking questions.
Thank you.
Ron, as always, I appreciate you. I never get to have conversations like this with anyone else. So I greatly appreciate your willingness to come in and, hash it out. Because
thanks. Yeah. Happy to be here.
It's, dude, what a train wreck of trying to understand ourselves as private citizens within this gigantic system. Mm-hmm. And it's not just government, it's, the health system, it's the education system, it's all of it. And it's like, God, man. Yeah. Anyway, I appreciate you, sir. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for taking the time. And hopefully we can do it again.
Absolutely. Let's do it.